Welcome back to Reformed Thinking. We're doing another deep dive, and today we're really shifting our focus.
We are.
Instead of looking at the mind as this, purely abstract thing, we're going to ground our study in something much more, well, physical, the body.
That's right. Our listener sent in a fantastic set of sources on a field called Embodied Cognition, or EC for short.
And this material, it really pushes back on that old idea that thinking just happens between your ears, completely separate from everything else.
It does. And so our mission here is really twofold. First, we need to get into the science of EC, what are its claims, what's the evidence.
Okay.
But then, and this is the core of it for us, we have to test these scientific findings against biblical anthropology. We need to see how they stack up against a reformed theological framework.
So is this connection between the mind and body just some kind of evolutionary accident?
Or is it a feature of intelligent design, a common grace observation that science is now catching up to?
It really starts with things you already intuitively get. I mean, why does walking around a room help you solve a problem you're stuck on?
Exactly. Or why do you start using your hands to explain something complicated, maybe sketching it out?
Right.
The sources we're looking at argue that those physical things you do, they aren't just little helpers for your thoughts.
They're saying the actions are part of the thinking itself.
That's the challenging claim we need to unpack.
So let's start with the scientific backdrop. EC is reacting against something. For a long time, there was this one powerful picture of how the mind works.
Oh, yeah. The brain as computer model. It was, and in some ways still is, incredibly influential.
And what was the basic idea behind that classical view?
It was very neat and tidy. You can think of it like a production line. First, you have input. The body's senses, perception, bring in data from the world.
Okay, that's step one.
Then, that data gets sent to a central processor, the brain. And this processor works by shuffling around abstract symbols, like software running code.
And these symbols are amodal, right? They don't have any connection to the sensory input they came from. They're just pure information.
Exactly. Purely abstract. And only after all that internal calculation is done, the processor sends a command, an output, and the body executes it.
So in that model, the body is basically just a keyboard and a monitor.
A monitor. Perfect analogy. It handles the input and the output, but the real work, the thinking, happens in this sealed-off central unit, totally divorced from the physical machine.
But that model, as tidy as it is, it started showing some cracks. The sources point out some puzzles it just couldn't solve.
It really did. And the biggest one is probably speed. Real-world, skillful action. Think of a shortstop fielding a ground ball, or a jazz musician improvising.
Okay.
Those actions are just too fast, too fluid to be explained by some slow, step-by-step internal calculation. If your brain had to run a full physics simulation before your body moved, you'd be hopelessly behind reality.
You'd miss the ball every time.
Every single time. And then there's the second puzzle. The simple fact that our physical state affects how we think.
Right. If the mind is just software, why does it matter if the hardware is tired?
That's the question. Why does being exhausted make it harder to reason? Why does stress mess with your memory? The classical model kind of treats the processor as if it's immune to things like blood sugar or hormones.
But it's not. It's a physical organ.
It's a physical organ in a physical body. And the third puzzle is what the sources call the offloading problem.
Offloading.
We are constantly using the world around us to help us think. We make lists, we draw diagrams, we use our fingers to count, we gesture.
We offload the mental work onto the environment.
Yes. Why would we do that if our brains were these all-powerful internal computers? It's like we instinctively know our internal memory is limited, so we share the computational burden with the world. And these puzzles, taken together, are what really open the door for embodied cognition.
Okay, so that brings us to EC itself. You said it's a broad term, so we need to break down the different claims.
We do. It's a spectrum, really. The basic question is just how the body matters. We can break it down into three main ideas, from the most accepted to the most radical.
Let's start with the mildest one, the influence thesis.
The influence thesis is pretty straightforward. It just says that bodily states reliably affect our thinking. They modulate it.
So the body doesn't do the thinking, but it changes the conditions under which the thinking happens.
Perfect. If you have a rush of adrenaline, your attention narrows. If you adopt a slumped, defeated posture, it can actually change how confidently you argue a point. The body's physiology sets the stage for the brain's operations.
That one seems pretty hard to argue with. The brain is part of the organism, after all.
It is. It's the weakest claim, but it's an important first step away from the old model.
So what's the next step up? The grounding thesis. This sounds like it gets closer to the core of the problem.
It does. The grounding thesis is a much bigger claim. This is the body actually contributes to the content or the format of our thoughts.
What does that mean, the format of our thoughts?
It means our concepts, especially for concrete things like push or heavy or near, aren't just abstract computer code. They are anchored or grounded in our sensory and motor systems.
So when I think about grasping an idea,
Your brain isn't just manipulating two abstract symbols for grasp an idea. It's actually activating some of the same neural patterns you use when you physically grasp an object, like a cup.
okay, so the abstract meaning is built on the physical experience.
Exactly. Abstraction is still possible, but it's built out of these bodily resources. We use spatial metaphors and motor programs as building blocks for higher thought. The body gives our concepts their structure.
Okay, that's a big step, but now for the really controversial one, the constitution thesis.
This is the one that really breaks down the boundary between mind and body. The constitution thesis says that in some cases, the body's actions are not just influencing or grounding thought, they are an ingredient in the cognitive process itself.
The body is part of the thinking.
It's partly realized by bodily action. The sources talk about epistemic actions. These are things you do with your body to make thinking easier, to solve a problem that would be too hard to do just in your head.
Can you give a classic example of this?
The go-to example is mental rotation. Imagine you're playing Tetris or maybe assembling some IKEA furniture. You have a piece and you need to see if it fits.
Okay.
You could try to mentally rotate the image of that piece in your head.
Mm-hmm.
That takes a lot of working memory. It's difficult.
Very.
Or you could just physically pick up the piece and turn it with your hands.
Right, which is what everyone does.
Exactly. And the constitution thesis says that physical act of rotating the object is a cognitive operation. You're not thinking and then moving. The moving is part of how you think. You're using the world to compute the answer.
It's an ingredient, not just a result.
That's the claim. And it's controversial because it means the mind isn't just in the skull.
Which is a perfect lead-in to the 4E family. These terms get used almost interchangeably sometimes, so we need to separate them out. Embodied, embedded, enactive, and extended.
This is so important, especially when we get to the theology. So embodied is what we've been talking about. The focus is on how the body's own sensorimotor capacities and internal regulation shape thought.
Okay, and embedded?
Embedded cognition says that thinking is always situated. It's adapted to a specific environment. Knowing how to navigate a city is embedded in the city's layout. But the key difference is the city itself isn't literally part of your mind. Context is critical, but the mind stays in the body.
Got it. What about enactive?
The enactive view is a bit bolder. It says we don't just passively receive information from the world, we actively construct our experience through action. Perception and action are inseparable. You don't see the world and then decide how to act. Seeing is a form of acting.
You see the world in terms of what you can do in it.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. Cognition is about skillfully managing that continuous loop between agent and world.
And finally, the most radical of the bunch, extended cognition.
This is the one that really pushes the boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
The extended thesis claims that external things, a notebook, a diagram, your smartphone, can literally become components of your cognitive system.
So my phone could be part of my memory.
If you reliably use it to store information, and you access that information as seamlessly as you would your own biological memory to complete a task, then yes, functionally, that device has become part of your memory system. The mind actually extends beyond the skin.
And you said this distinction is vital for a reformed analysis. Why?
Because of where we draw the line for human identity, for what is subject to sin and redemption.
Okay.
If we say our body is an ingredient in our thinking, the constitution thesis, that lines up beautifully with a biblical view of psychosomatic unity. But if we say the mind extends into a non-biological artifact, like a smartphone.
Does that mean your phone is part of the self that fell? Is your phone subject to sin? Does it get redeemed?
You see the problem. Scripture is very clear that the soma, the biological body, is the vessel created by God that is subject to the fall and awaits resurrection. Extending the mind beyond that biological unit risks diluting the unique created nature of the human person.
So we can accept that our thinking is embodied and grounded.
Absolutely.
Without having to agree that our minds are literally spilling out into our technology.
That's the boundary. The architecture is designed for coordination with the world, but the soul is tethered to the biological person God formed from the dust.
All right, so let's dig into the science a bit more. These ideas didn't just appear out of nowhere. What are the historical roots here?
You can trace them back quite a way, really as a reaction against that rigid computational view from the mid-20th century.
Where do we start?
In America, you had the pragmatists, like William James and John Dewey. For them, knowledge wasn't about having a perfect picture of the world in your head. It was about being able to act successfully. To know something was to know how to use it. Thinking was tied to doing.
And in Europe, you had a different stream of thought doing similar work.
Yes, the phenomenologists. Merleau-Ponty is the key figure here. He was fighting against Cartesian dualism, that idea of a mind completely separate from the body.
His argument was that we're always already in the world, right?
Exactly. Our perception is shaped by our body. The world appears to us as a field of possible actions. Our posture, our physical abilities, they all structure how we see and understand the environment.
And then you have the developmental psychologists.
Right, Piaget. He showed how an infant's understanding of the world is built up through sensorimotor activity, reaching, grasping, moving. As the baby's motor skills develop, their conceptual world expands in lockstep.
And Vygotsky, with his idea of scaffolding.
Yes, Vygotsky stressed how much we rely on external supports, language, gestures, cultural tools, to build up our internal mental functions.
But the biggest scientific push came from ecological psychology, James Gibson.
Gibson was a game changer. He basically said the whole computational model was asking the wrong question. The mind doesn't need to build a complex internal model of the world from scratch.
Why not?
Because the environment itself is already full of rich information. And perception is the active process of just picking up that information.
This is where he introduces the idea of affordances.
That's his central concept. An affordance is an opportunity for action the environment offers to an organism. A chair affords sitting for a human. A wall affords climbing for an insect.
So perception isn't neutral. When I look at a cup, I'm not just seeing a cylinder, I'm seeing its grasp ability for my hand.
You see what you can do with it. Perception is tuned to action, and that makes cognition look a lot less like symbol crunching and a lot more like skilled coordination with the world.
So let's get into the specific mechanisms that make this work. There are 5 key ones in the sources. The first is perception-action coupling.
This is the bedrock. Cognition isn't a straight line. Input, process, output. It's a continuous, high-speed feedback loop.
How does that loop work?
You make a move. That movement changes what you sense. That new sensory information guides your next move. And on it goes in real time.
And the intelligence is in the loop itself.
It is. It's in the constant coordination and adjustment. Think about driving a car on an icy road. You're not solving equations. You're in a tight dynamic loop, making tiny adjustments with the wheel based on the feedback you're feeling from the tires. The intelligence is distributed across you and the car and the road.
Okay, that makes sense. The second mechanism is sensorimotor simulation.
Right. This explains how we can think about things even when we're not moving. The idea is that when you think about an action, you recruit some of the same neural machinery you'd use to actually perform that action.
So if I think about kicking a ball, my motor cortex lights up a little bit.
It does, even if you're sitting perfectly still. The brain runs a kind of low-level simulation of the physical experience. This is what gives our concepts their feel.
Which really supports that grounding thesis we talked about.
It's the mechanism behind it. It's why our abstract language is filled with physical metaphors, like a heavy topic or a sharp critique. We're using these sensorimotor simulations to structure abstract ideas.
All right, mechanism 3 is epistemic action. We touched on this already.
This is when you use your body to make thinking easier. The action's main purpose isn't to change the world, but to change your own cognitive state.
Like spreading out all the puzzle pieces on a table.
Perfect example. You're using the table as an external memory space. It helps you see patterns and relationships that would be impossible to hold in your head all at once. You're outsourcing the cognitive load.
And sketching an idea on a napkin during a meeting would be another one.
A classic one. You take a fleeting internal idea and make it stable and public so you and the other person can both work on it. It's a hugely powerful strategy for complex problems.
Okay, mechanism 4 gets internal. Interoception and effective modulation.
This is a reminder that cognition is regulated by our internal bodily state. Interoception is just the technical term for sensing what's going on inside your body. Your heart rate, your gut feelings, fatigue.
And those internal signals shape our emotions, our affective state.
Yes, and emotion isn't some messy distraction from pure reason. It's a vital control system. It tells us what's important.
How does that work?
Well, if you feel a knot of anxiety in your stomach, that's an interoceptive signal, your brain immediately reallocates its resources. Your attention narrows to potential threats. Your decisions become more risk-averse. That gut feeling is your body biasing what your mind pays attention to.
And the final one, number 5, is morphological computation.
This one is fascinating. It's the idea that the body's physical structure, its shape, its weight, the way its joints work, actually perform some of the computation for us.
The body's design simplifies the control problem for the brain.
It does. Think about how our tendons store and release energy when we run. That elastic property simplifies the work our muscles have to do. The brain doesn't have to calculate and control every single detail of the motion, because the body's physical form is already doing part of the work.
The structure itself is smart.
In a way, yes. It reduces the number of things the nervous system has to actively manage, making complex actions possible.
Okay, those 5 mechanisms give a really solid picture. Let's run through some of the evidence now, starting with language.
We already mentioned the metaphors, but there's brain imaging evidence too. When people read sentences about actions, he hammered the nail. The motor parts of their brain associated with hammering show activity.
Gesture.
Gesture is huge. People don't just wave their hands around randomly. Their gestures often trace the structure of the idea they're trying to explain. It suggests the thought itself has a spatial, motor-like structure that they're externalizing.
What about evidence from reasoning and working memory?
Here you see that experts in complex fields like engineering or surgery rely heavily on practiced physical actions. They point, they manipulate models, they sketch. They use the physical world to hold intermediate steps of a problem steady so their internal working memory can focus on the bigger picture.
If you take away their ability to do that, their performance plummets.
Drastically. Which confirms that this externalization isn't just a helpful add-on, it's a core part of their reasoning process.
And in development, we see this process from the very beginning.
Absolutely. An infant's world of concepts changes as its motor abilities change. When a baby learns to crawl, its understanding of space and distance fundamentally reorganizes. Doing comes first, and it shapes knowing. The body is the mind's first teacher.
Finally, what about tools and scaffolding?
This is about how we integrate objects into our cognitive system. When a musician becomes an expert, their instrument becomes transparent. Their attention isn't on their fingers, it's on the music they're creating through the instrument.
The tool becomes part of them functionally.
It becomes integrated into that perception-action loop. And the same goes for things like lists and maps. They act as external memory in workspaces, allowing us to perform cognitive feats like planning a cross-country trip that would be completely impossible with our internal memory alone.
So the scientific picture is pretty clear. The brain is essential, but it doesn't work in isolation. Thinking is an activity that involves the whole body and its environment. Okay, we've laid out the science. We see how the body matters. Now we get to the really critical part for our deep dive. Why does it matter this way? Let's put this into a theological framework.
This is the hinge, you're right. The first step is to affirm that what science is observing here is a facet of common grace.
The Creator designed it this way. The hand was designed to teach the mind.
Exactly. These are valid observations. But we have to immediately filter the secular interpretations that often come with these findings.
The big one being evolutionary materialism.
It is. If you start from the assumption that there's no creator, then the human body is just a happy accident of survival. Its cognitive design is only for fitness, for passing on genes.
And in that view, an affordance is just an opportunity to survive, not to fill a purpose.
Right. It removes any sense of higher purpose or moral significance. But in a created framework, the body's design is for a purpose to exercise dominion, to commune with God. This preserves the dignity and meaning behind our embodied nature.
And this brings us to the 2 ancient errors that the biblical view of the person corrects.
Yes, and they keep popping up in new disguises. The first is materialist monism, the idea that you are only your physical body with no soul.
And the second is the opposite error, Gnostic dualism.
Right, the Gnostic view that the body is a prison, a piece of junk that the real you, the spirit, wants to escape. The Christian worldview rejects both of these and affirms what we call psychosomatic unity.
A soul-body whole. Let's ground this in Genesis 2.7.
That's the foundational text. God forms the man from the afar in the dust of the ground. So the physical body is an essential part from the very start.
Not an afterthought.
Not at all. Then he breathes into him the nishma chayim, the breath of life. And the result is a nefesh haya, a living soul or a living being. The Hebrew mindset is clear. You don't have a body. You are a body animated by God's breath.
Which is a perfect theological foundation for embodied cognition.
It is. And you see this unity all through the Old Testament's vocabulary for the inner life.
Right, they use physical organs to describe mental processes.
They do. The leb, the heart, wasn't just the seat of emotion like we think of it. It was the center of intellect, will, decision-making, the whole inner person.
That's so different from the Greek idea of reason in the head and passion in the chest.
Completely different. And it goes even deeper. The cilia, the kidneys, or loins, were seen as the seat of deep conscience and emotion. The psalmist says his kidneys instruct him in the night.
So the biblical authors would not have been surprised at all by the idea that gut feelings influence our decisions.
Not the slightest. For them, wisdom and thinking were always understood as deeply embodied, physically felt processes.
Okay, so let's apply this to our systematic framework. Creation, fall, redemption. What did this psychosomatic unity look like at creation?
In the beginning, Adam had perfect psychosomatic harmony. His physical senses gave him a pure, undistorted knowledge of God and creation. And the covenant of works itself was an embodied command.
Right, it required a physical act of restraint. Don't eat from the tree.
Exactly. The integration of his mind and his hands was a feature of his intelligent design for ruling righteously.
But then the fall shatters that harmony. How does total depravity affect this system?
The fall corrupts everything, all parts and faculties of soul and body. Sin didn't just infect the mind, it fundamentally disordered the relationship between the mind and the body.
The hierarchy gets flipped upside down.
It does. Reason, which was meant to rule, now becomes a slave to the body's appetites. And this is where Paul's distinction between soma, the body, and sarx, the flesh, is so critical.
The soma is the physical body itself, which is neutral, created good.
Yes, the body is for the Lord. But the sarx is the principle of rebellion, the sin nature that has hijacked the body.
Paul says in Romans 7 that sin is at war in his melos, his physical members.
It's almost muscular. Sin gets embedded in our physical habits and cravings. The fallen mind, the phronimate sarkos, is a mindset on the flesh. Cognition gets twisted to serve and rationalize what the body wants. Embodied cognition, which was a gift, becomes a liability under the curse.
So this beautiful system of coordination is now geared towards rebellion until Christ intervenes.
And the incarnation is the ultimate statement on the goodness of embodiment. The Son of God took on a human nature, a physical body, but without sin.
He validates the physical.
He validates it, and he lives out a perfect embodied obedience. Hebrews says he learned obedience through what he suffered physically. Hunger, thirst, the agony of the cross. He subjected his physical experience to his Father's will, perfectly reversing Adam's embodied failure.
And our final hope is not to escape the body, but to have it redeemed.
That's the key. The hope is the resurrection. Christ rose with a physical, glorified body. And Paul says we eagerly await the redemption of our bodies. We're not waiting to become ghosts. We're waiting for the day when our minds and bodies are in perfect, sinless sync again.
Okay, this is where it gets incredibly practical. If our minds and bodies are this connected, then sanctification, our growth in holiness, can't just be an intellectual exercise.
It can't. It has to involve training the body. Romans 12.1, present your bodies as a living sacrifice. That's a physical command.
So we apply the third use of the law, which guides believers in how to live.
And that guidance involves physical habituation. If thinking and doing are linked, then obeying means training our physical habits. Physical actions are often the very means the Spirit uses to shape the affections of our soul.
So physical discipline isn't just a result of holiness, it can be a tool to achieve it.
It often is. Look at Paul in 1 Corinthians 9. He says, hypopiazo, I beat my body, like a boxer. He recognizes that physical laziness or uncontrolled appetites can make the spiritual mind dull.
So we train the body.
We train it. We physically get up and walk away from temptation. We intentionally sit up straight to pay attention. We kneel in prayer to fight our own pride. These are physical acts that retrain our mental and spiritual states.
Let's talk about the means of grace then. Preaching, for a start. It's a very physical event.
It is. God chose a profoundly embodied means. Faith comes by hearing. It requires sound waves created by a human voice to travel through the air and strike a physical eardrum. It requires you to physically sit, attend, and submit your senses to the authority of the Word. God uses our biology to deliver spiritual truth.
And the sacraments go even further, engaging the whole person.
They do. They're a defense against a hyper-intellectual faith. They are, as Calvin said, visible words. In the Lord's Supper, the physical sensations, the taste, the texture, the act of eating and drinking engage our embodied cognition to seal the promise to our hearts in a way that just thinking about it can't.
You taste and see that the Lord is good.
Literally.
This idea of habit formation of liturgy seems so relevant today with our digital habits.
It's a direct battle of liturgies.
Yeah.
The sources would call the constant phone scrolling a cultural liturgy. It's a repeated physical habit that trains your mind for distraction, fragmentation, and instant gratification. It trains the sarks.
So the physical structure of a worship service is a counter formation.
It's a counter-liturgy. Physically standing to sing, bowing for confession, sitting under the preached word, these are rhythms that train the body in reverence, humility, and attention. That bodily training helps sustain the mind's faith during the week.
Okay, let's bring this all together with the head, heart, hands application. What does this mean for our head, for what we believe?
For the head, this doctrine is a direct confrontation to the modern Gnostic idol of self-creation.
The idea that the real me is just a feeling inside, and my physical body is irrelevant or even an obstacle.
Exactly. This doctrine forces us to believe that our bodies, with their specific gender, limits, and form, are a good gift and a divine appointment. They ground us in reality and prevent our minds from spinning off into the fantasy that we can be whoever we want to be.
It's a call to accept the reality of our createdness.
It is.
Okay, for the heart, what we love. This addresses our affections.
Here we have to confront the idol of comfort, that deep-seated desire to keep the body undisturbed and satisfied at all times. Sins of the flesh, like gluttony and sloth, are physical acts that train the heart to love comfort more than Christ. They deaden our spiritual senses.
And the antidote is somatic reverence.
Deliberate physical acts of worship. Kneeling in prayer forces a physical posture of submission on a proud heart. Lifting your voice in song physically engages your body in the act of praise. These physical actions can help warm a cold heart.
Finally, the hands, what we do.
This demands physical presence. It's a strong argument against the idea of a purely virtual church being the norm. The ecclesia is a physical gathering of bodies.
You can't one another a screen.
You really can't. Bearing one another's burdens often means physically showing up. Serving the church means physical effort, cleaning up, sitting with someone who is grieving. This doctrine gives profound meaning to that simple physical work.
And the most direct application of all this is fasting.
Fasting is the ultimate practice of embodied sanctification. You are intentionally denying the body's most basic demand for food to physically enact a greater spiritual hunger for God.
It breaks the loop.
It breaks the mastery of the belly. It's a way of training your physical members to serve righteousness, not appetite. You are physically demonstrating to your own body and mind that you do not live by bread alone. It's working out your obedience in your own muscles and sinews.
This has been an incredible deep dive. We've seen how the science of embodied cognition, when you look at it through a reformed lens, confirms that we're not ghosts in a machine.
And we're not biological accidents either. We are psychosomatic unities designed for this incredible coordination between mind, body, and world. And that design is something to be redeemed and sanctified.
The resurrection of Christ gives our bodies an incredible dignity. The gospel calls us out of a life where sin uses our bodies for rebellion.
And into a life where we actively present those same bodies as living sacrifices, as our spiritual act of worship.
So, as we close, and as we wait for that day when our bodies of humiliation will be made like Christ's glorious body, here's a final thought for you to consider.
How often do you treat your physical life, your posture as you listen to this, your daily habits, where you go, what you look at, as if it's spiritually neutral?
When in fact, the ground of your physical existence is the very training ground God is using to shape what you think, what you love, and what you do.
Every physical habit is a spiritual discipline. It's either training your body to serve the Lord or allowing the flesh to rule. Our bodies are not our own. We are to glorify God in our body and in our spirit, which are God's.